right, we're going to get started. I want to thank you for coming out. Of course, thankful for the rain, keeps the grass green, gets us through a couple of weeks. And so we had a great evening Friday night. Good time. It was lots of pie. So thank you, ladies. No one went home hungry. And so that was Friday night, and so visitors were out, and one of the parts that I enjoyed seeing was afterwards, guys were just hanging around. It wasn't like they were running off or anything like that, and so that's always good to see, and sorry to rub it in, ladies, we just had a wonderful time. Okay. Us men know how to do it, so... Yeah. Yes, throwing the axe. Maybe that could be your next ladies' function, throwing axes. And oh, there you go. Yeah, it's the frying pan. Yeah, there you go. Yeah. Get those heavy ones, man. That'd be good. All right, so a couple things coming up. Not this week, but the next week. They have the fair, and as we have newer individuals come to church, I just want to explain the fair. The fair, it's a great thing to do, just to give out information on the church, and then also trying to give the gospel. And sometimes, we put the sign-up list, and so individuals are like, well, what do you do at the fair? And I'll say it this way, we have a tent, possibly two this year, but a tent where has our signs on it, things like that. And normally what will happen is, because kids just kind of walk around in circles, it's not just kids, but adults, and they'll walk in the circles, so you'll see them 300 times during the day because they have nothing to do. But as they come by, of course, there's a few things that we have. We normally put a viewfinder there, and it might say, what does America need? And they look in the viewfinder, and it'll say Jesus or something. And as they raise their head from that, you have a track. And a lot of times, depending on who it is, like a teenager, we have the chick track. Some of you know what those are. It's little booklets, cartoon kind of thing. And we have that because the kids hopefully will read it, take the time to read that. And I remember even myself, the chick tracks, always reading it. It was always, and they have a good message on it. Has the scripture, has you thinking about different things there. And so they raise their head, from the viewfinder. Hey, how could you answer that? Yeah, it's something for you. You can just give them the track. And then if you can get in a conversation, then you can actually try to give them the gospel. And one of the things that we've added the last couple of years is snow cones. So we do a ton of snow cones, probably, I don't know how many thousands we do over the week, but we go through the snow cones, and they get them free. So we make the cones, spray the juice on it, all those different things. And so normally it's hot at the fair, so kids, parents are more willing to go, take the snow cone. Everyone loves the snow cone, especially when it's free, all right? And because of that, it's easier to give the gospel, it's easier to give them the track. A couple of years ago, we kind of found that America is changing. You can tell that even as you're at the fair, just because people are more, I guess, negative. But we found even with the snow cone now, though, everyone's got a smile because it's free. All right, and so if you're like, hey, I don't know if I can do that. It's pretty simple. I would encourage all of you to try to do the fair. It's 2 hours. You have a hard time walking, per se. They have lots of little, whatever, trailer things that they'll even drive you over there, drop you off. Pretty much you're there, and that's all I'm saying. You're just giving out the tracts, the snow cones, get a smile on your face, and if you're more comfortable to talk even more, then you can do that. So I really encourage you. Fair is coming up in a week or so, okay? And so the times are 12 to 2, 2 to 4, and 4 to 6. No, that's not correct. Is it? 2 to 4, yes, 2 to 4, 4 to 6, 6 to 8. We used to do 12 to 2, but no one was at the fair. Everyone's sleeping still. All right, so we moved it later. We go Monday through Thursday. Friday, it tended to be a less traveled day there. And then they used to have the concert. I don't know if they have the concert anymore, but people would never come by during the concert. So that is that. 4 days, encourage you to do it. And then the next activity after that, there's the family event, and it's for everyone. A couple different things there. Thursday will be the midweek service, and then Friday there's kind of like a banquet, and then Saturday is more of a activity day, and then Sunday to wrap that up, and that's August something, 4th, August 4th, okay. All right, and then also just pray about the school. School, we're trying to, of course, have that out, and if you know anybody who's looking for Christian education, just that it's out there. All right, let's take our Bibles, Joshua chapter 3. Joshua chapter 3. They are going into the promised land. Can you remember what we talked about last week? Anybody? Jericho. Okay, all right, good. All right, so we're talking about crossing the Jordan today, and you think about that event. They're going to go into the land and the excitement that would take place. You've been waiting for this event. Think about events. What are certain events that you get all excited about? Vacation, there's one. You get all excited because, you know, hey, we're going to maybe fly, and, you know, you're going to make the trip. You're all excited about that. Anything else? Retirement. Yeah, retirement. All right. Yeah, lower gas prices. Okay. I'm excited about that. I don't know when it's coming though. So, yes, and someone gave me something to tell you, so I want to share it with you. Now, I will let you know. It says fuel prices are so high that I went to the car dealership and test drove 3 cars to run my errands. And if you want to find out more tips about saving money on gas and things, just go to Rita. She shared that. Yeah. And yeah, it is something. My wife and I were having some car issue. It seems to leak oil a lot. Not leak, or go through oil. So we were at the dealership, and I said, where are your new cars? There are no new cars. There's nothing. And I said, they want us to buy e-cars, so can I see your e-cars? Oh, there are no e-cars, and you can't even get those for months. Oh, okay, all right. So, all right, well, that's good. Good to know. Just keep pumping up the gas price, okay. Of course, it's going down. We all know that, and I don't like to get political about that. Of course, it's going down because of the recession and elections and all those things. It's not necessarily. And I will say it this way, whatever you think, and as you talk to your grandchildren, all those different things, us using oil from our strategic, that should be a no-no. I don't care if it brings the gas price down. I would say that we're not in war. We save those things for times where we need it. Yes, and we're selling it, as you put that out there. but I will say it that way, at least for me, if I did get political, don't touch that oil. That's for emergencies. And this is not an emergency. Okay? You know, emergencies are war in my book. Okay? All right, enough of that. Let's move on. See, Rita, you got me on that. I don't like to get on that kind of stuff, but we got to move on. Okay? Now, and so as we look at Joshua 3, a question is, how does Jordan crossing relate to the Red Sea crossing? And, you know, as we're saying, hey, we're crossing into the Jordan River. It's an exciting time. There's certain events that you prepare for, you think about, maybe as a parent, you know, your child is getting married. I mean, those are big events, and you kind of are like, hey, we're ready for this. We're excited about it. And, of course, I've spent all this money, and how long is it? It's only 45 minutes. I spent thousands of dollars for 45 minutes. Wow, crazy. Let's move on from that, too. Okay. No more girls, so, hey, it's all done. All right. All right. Now, so let's look at Joshua 3. Joshua rose early in the morning. They removed from Shittim and came to Jordan. He and all the children of Israel lodged there before they passed over. And that's the time we're talking about. You know, they're prepping. All the thoughts going through your mind. That's the point. I mean, wow, we get to go into the Jordan finally after all these years. And it came to pass after 3 days. I mean, can you imagine that? Then I got to wait 3 days. I mean, let's get going. You know, woo-hoo, let's get going. And they're waiting. That the officers went through the host, and they commanded the people, saying, when ye see the ark of the covenant of the Lord your God, and the priests, the Levites, bearing it, then ye shall remove from your place and go after it. Okay. And so you could read all the way through chapter or verse 17 there, and you'll see how all these things took place. But the point is, 40 years. As you remember, why were they 40 years? We've got a few visitors here. Why did they wander? Disobedience. Disobedience. God said, go into the land. They said, hey, we can't go into the land. Can't go into the land because there are giants. And because of that lack of faith, God then said, okay, you're going to wander for the number of days you were gone. And that's how many years you're going to wander. Everyone passed. And of course, now they're getting ready to go in. Now, there is one little thing that is a little different, because as you would normally see in like Numbers, the Kohathites, that was the clan that would actually carry the ark and all the different things like that. And of course, here you actually have who? We did read that. The Levitical priest there. So it was that was something a little different. If you're into that kind of thing, things were a little different. And so the people would have followed. As they followed, it says about 2,000 cubits. And just to give you this, that is about a half mile. They're following behind the ark and the priests there. And of course, as they go to the water, what happens? Well, they stop there at the edge, and they're ready to step in. And as they step in, what happens? As you remember the story, going back, the water stopped. It just kind of piled up, okay? And, of course, they're able to walk across. And this is a miracle. Now, just again, miracle, no matter how you want to look at it, it's a miracle, because some people like to explain those things away. And how some would explain it, they would say, well, there was an earthquake, and the earthquake down the river, rocks fell into the river. Of course, it stopped the water, and that's how it happened. Okay? It's still a miracle, even if you even didn't want to believe what God said. Why would it be a miracle? Well, the ground was dry. Okay? When you get a river, it's wet. So if all of a sudden it stopped, and just walked through. But we wouldn't say it because God caused it to stop. Water piled up. And of course, those things happen. And wonderful thing. Now, as we think of all the different things about this event, God had promised that the people would have what? They would have the promised land. As you think about your life, my life, sometimes we don't get what we want immediately, correct? Sometimes you have to wait. The people had to wait. And God sometimes has patience. Now we also understand this would take place. Why? Because it was God's promise. God had promised. There are certain things God promises, it will take place. Okay? And the same thing today. However you want to look at it, one day Jesus is going to come back. Okay? And we used to, have the different fears of, especially in this group, like the world was going to have a nuclear explosion. It was just going to be wiped out. Russia and America. Well, we knew that wasn't going to happen. Why? Wasn't God's plan. Why? Because that's not how the world is destroyed. Okay? So we know that isn't going to happen. Okay? And the same thing even when you think about, life, it's all in God's hand. Some of you have a fear of flying, right? Fear of flying. I don't want to fly. Okay? But the point is, it's appointed man once die. We all have an appointment. You're going to die when? When God says. All right? So if today is the day I'm going to die, I can't stop it. I can't stop it because God has appointed your death date. It's appointed. Okay? So if you happen to die on the airplane, that's because it was what? God's will. It was appointed. Okay? You could still be afraid as you fly, but it's going to happen when it's going to happen. God knows whatever happens there. And so God had promised these things, and so it took many years. Of course, there was disobedience that took place. All these individuals had passed. And, of course, then as we come to this point, you could think of, well, what are some of the other purposes for this miracle? Why would God have this happen here? Well, as you remember, there was a change in leadership. We're going from who? Moses to Joshua. Moses to Joshua. And as you're going from Moses to Joshua, of course, naturally there's going to be what? A little bit of, hey, it's not Moses. We got the second-rate guy, Joshua. Moses is gone. And as you remember, he didn't get to go in because he struck the rock. But we have Joshua here. And what does this do for Joshua, of course? Well, the people would say, the hand of God is on Joshua. The hand's on him. God is using him. Okay? Not only for the people, but you think it would be a kind of an encouragement for Joshua? I mean, yes, Joshua knew beyond any doubt that he was truly called of God because God is using him here. He's doing a miracle pretty much like he did with Moses. Joshua crosses the Jordan. God allows him to pass. What happened with Moses? He had the Red Sea. God opens it up. You might say, well, the Red Sea was a bigger one. Yeah, you might say that. But both of them are still what? Miracles. Miracles. That would be something to see. And so God is establishing the leadership, and that's an important thing. Because again, a lot of times people will fall Follow the leadership. Okay? Now follow. Now, let's go to Joshua chapter 4. Sometimes we'll downplay things over time, but I think this is an important thing for us all to remember as you go to the next thought. So the people, they're going to cross over. They cross, and then what did they do? Well, you look here. Came to pass, when all the people were clean passed over Jordan, that the Lord spake unto Joshua, saying, Take you 12 men out of the people, out of every tribe a man, and command ye them, say, Take you hence out of the midst of Jordan, out of the place where the priest's feet stood firm, 12 stones. Ye shall carry them over with you, and leave them in the lodging place where ye shall lodge this night. Then Joshua called the 12 men, whom he had prepared of the children of Israel, out of every tribe of man. Joshua said unto them, Pass over before the ark of the Lord your God into the midst of Jordan. Take ye up every man of you a stone upon his shoulder, according to the number of the tribes of the children of Israel. All right, so you can see what's happening. They're taking these 12 stones. And why are they doing this? Well, it's a memorial. It's a memorial. This is what God has done. They see the memorial. Hey, look what God did for us. Remember what God did for us? Because a lot of times the Israelites, when you think about it, all the 40 years, part of their problem was they forgot what God had done just a few weeks before. Remember that? I mean, God just took them through the Red Sea, and like 3 or 4 days later, what are they doing? Complaining because there was no water, there was no food. And then God, of course, would give them those things. They would forget. Well, this is what, it's a memorial, 12 stones. It's not like little pebbles. I mean, pretty big. They had to carry them on their shoulder, put those down, and that's there to remind the people, not just the people, but also who? Well, future generations, they could go, hey, remember this? Remember what God did for us? God is a wonderful God. He did those things for us. And there are things that we can remember. I think it's important for young people to see what has happened. And what has happened for the Israelites, what has happened for you and me. You think of different things over the years, and you might say, hey, this is a memorial. Sometimes younger people don't really always want to look back, but I think it's good to look back because those things are things God has done for us. We can remember those things. God is a good God, and I think that's an important, a valuable lesson to rethink. Hey, remember when this happened? Remember God provided? Okay. My wife and I, we've said this, got married, moved up, San Francisco area, real cheap area to live. Actually very expensive. And I was making really good money as a Christian day school teacher. It was $10,000 and paid my own Social Security out of that. It's doing well. But we made the move, and my job didn't start for a little bit. We was struggling there. Had a beautiful car, Delta 88. It was a boat, man. It was big, but someone stole it. I remember that. Someone stole it. It was good for drugs, I guess. You get a lot in there. I remember the policeman, hey, do you know where your car is? Oh, it's 4 in the morning. No, I don't know. Oh, okay, well, someone drove it. You'll have to pay to get it out of the out of the lot. I don't have any money. Okay, you can keep it. No, we did go down and get it and had to then pay more money to get rid of it. But there were times that we would look at it and how God would provide, and so we looked at it this way. Even our first daughter, Brooke, Her middle name is Cherith, Brooke Cherith. Remember Brooke Cherith? God what? Provided for who? Elijah. Okay, God provided. God provided for us. And we remember those things that God did for us. And, little things here or there, we remember those things. And you think about your life, sometimes you go through those times and you're like, hey, how did God provide? It's good to have those little thoughts, little memorials. Now, for some of us, we went through the process of this building. What a wonderful building. I look at it. We went through that process. Some of you were here during that whole time. Building processes aren't always the funnest thing to go through, but we went through it. Church, we even was growing through it. Some of you remember meeting up there two times, 2 services every Sunday. Tear it down every service. Have church, have kids programs. But then when you walk in, you go, hey, I remember that. I remember all these things. This for many of us is a what? Memorial of God's goodness. I remember the first Sunday walking in here, looking into the window. Some of you look at the window. What do you see up there? The cross. Okay. Wow, that's something, a memorial, something to think about. God's goodness and how it was paid. It's now paid off. That's God's goodness, isn't it? All right. God is good. And so there are certain things in our mind that we can remember. I remember, hey, this day, this event, something happened. It's always good to put those things in our life and to look back, see what God has done. Now, encourage you to just take a little bit of time. Think of your life.
Sometimes we don't tell our children these things. We forget, we take for granted that maybe they know or whatever. But I think it's really important to remind our kids of God's goodness, and that's why they had the stones here, so that they would remember every time they passed by it, to talk about it to their children and to their grandchildren.
And so, so you see that pile of rocks? Of course, that rock would mean something to them. Oh yeah, you remember? That's what God's goodness. The grandchildren, I got young ones even here this morning. Hey, remember this? Now, for them, it won't matter as much because they didn't go through it, but still, it's important. We have different things that the older generation puts up. Sometimes the newer generation wants to tear them down, but ultimately, there are reasons many times we put up those rocks, those things. Yes? Right. Yeah, and that's a good example. Yeah, tear it down. And we understand our country isn't perfect, but there's still certain things, there are processes that you go through, different things like that. So, yes, that's a good example. Of course, you just heard the thunder. We have a reminder many times when it rains. That reminder is what? Rainbow, okay? Rainbow. So it's always something. See that rainbow? You got your grandchildren. Hey, a rainbow came about when? The flood. Remember that. Kind of remind your grandchildren of those things. All right. So I think it's important. Anything else? Anything for you that might stand out? Like to share? Yes. All right. Okay. probably little things that bring up those things, and you remember it because it's a memorial. And right, 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 right. Yeah, that's good. Good to think about. Anything else? Got a few. Yes, ma'am. Right. Yeah. Right. We do. Until something happens. Yeah. Yeah. And that's something. Yeah. And we all understand this. We're not guaranteed. That's one thing. We're of course see this a lot with my brother-in-law and those things. Just how that quick, things change. So yes. Yeah. Yeah. Right. Yeah. And sometimes those little things kind of bring back memories, and you think about it. Anybody else? Yes, sir. Right. Right. What Christ. Right. And that's a good one. We just remember what He's done for us, because you think about when that happened. Hopefully you remember that. It's an important day. God touched you, and you share that. And that's actually even like at the fair. You say, "Well, I don't know what to say." What did God do for you? You say it in your way. Might speak to somebody. Yeah. Sure. Yep. Yeah. Right. Yep. I mean, we have something to share. God's good. Yeah. And it's not all easy. Just think of who. We just went through Joseph, right? It's kind of what we're looking at this year for our students. And it wasn't an easy thing, but God brought him through for certain things. And really, when you think about it, I was watching a message on it. Even when you think of Joseph, it's interesting. What is really the story of Joseph about? Sometimes we're like, well, he goes from a slave to the hero, but really, when you think about it, why did it all happen? Well, it was to save what? The nation of Israel. The nation of Israel could have what? Starved. But God used that bad thing, really, we would say bad, for his good, because the children were what? Fed, were able to keep growing. They then went through slavery, things like that, and we could see those things. All right. Now, of course, we could spend quite a bit of time, because there was a lot of parallels between the crossing of the Red Sea and the Jordan. Quite a few verses there that we could look at. Example, Exodus 14:4, and then you have Joshua 3:10. God's power was displayed. Different things there. God's power. Exodus 14:19 and Joshua 3:14. God's presence was with his people in the cloud and in the ark. God was with them. Exodus 14:16 and Joshua 3:15. God's command was obeyed. The miracle occurred as the waters were parted and stopped flowing. And so, hey, there was obedience. They did what they were supposed to do. Exodus 14:22, the waters were parted in a visible way. It was something that they could see. It wasn't just a little world tries to explain all these things away, but it was something that was visible. Exodus 14:22, Joshua 3:17, the Israelites crossed on dry ground. Okay, would have been impassable because of the mud. Different things like that. Exodus 14:26 through 28, the waters returned to their original position. Okay, at the command of the leader, and so the water comes back. Exodus 14:31, the people had a reverent fear of God in the light of his miracle. Hey, look at what God did. There are certain miracles over time you would say, you know what, we're gonna obey. You know, hey, sometimes negative things happen, and the people though would have a fear of God. Exodus 15:1, Joshua 4, the leader declared God's deliverance. So it wasn't Moses who did it, wasn't Joshua who did it, it was God who did it. May we remember that. A lot of times man wants to do what? Hey, look what we've done. What we've done. Well, I always like to put it this way, look at what God has done. God has done a wonderful thing. God's done a wonderful thing in you. If you're saved here this morning, you can give testimony about what? God has changed me. That is a what? Miracle in itself. You know, many of you could share that. The direction of your life, there's a change. That is a miracle. And as we think of these things that God has done. All right. Now, just as we think about some application, I don't have a lot of time here, but really God's timing is perfect. When God wants to get it done, will get done. God is having things done even today, not necessarily always. We might look at it and go, why is it happening? We can guess. Only God knows the reason. We can guess. But, you know, at a certain point, even in our own country, we continually reject God as a country. We have individuals who still obey and are following him. But as a country, if we're rejecting, there's got to be a consequence sooner or later. Okay? Those things happen. And however we look at it, God's timing is perfect. What God does, sometimes it takes some time. But then as we think about the time that it took to get them in, they have this memorial, reminds them of all that Jesus Christ had done. And we'll think of one last memorial that God does, even in our own life. I think in a couple weeks we'll have this. But we have a memorial that we practice here at the church. Any of you want to guess what that might be? Communion, Lord's Supper. All right? Why do we practice the Lord's Supper as we do? To remember, but we kind of do what they did, right? Remember? They took bread, took the cup, and something we're still doing a couple thousand years later, following it. And that's a what? It's a memorial. It's something that we remember. We look back. And of course, as we look back, we see what Jesus Christ did for us. And that's something for us to remember. All right, let's close with a word of prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, Lord, we do thank you for your goodness. And of course, as we think about the children of Israel going into the promised land, what a wonderful thing for all those years. And they could see that you were in control. They were able to remember those things. I pray for each one of us as we're Christians that we don't always just look back. We want to see what you are doing now in our life. I pray that you would help us to remember the things that you have done. Help our young people see what God has done, even in the Mount Vernon Baptist Temple, but to see bigger and better things take place. And to keep striving to please you. I pray that you would help us as a church to live for you. We thank you for all you've done. Bless service to come in Jesus' name. Amen.